Have you ever walked into a room and felt every gaze turned toward you, locking onto your presence with an intensity that borders on uncomfortable? They study you in silence, their eyes tracing something invisible yet undeniable, and then they look away without a single word spoken, no greeting, no explanation, just that lingering, weighted attention hanging in the air like a question mark suspended between souls. If you've experienced this peculiar phenomenon, this silent scrutiny that follows you through crowded spaces, quiet gatherings, and everyday encounters, then what you're about to discover will fundamentally shift how you understand yourself and the profound purpose written across your very existence. This isn't paranoia. This isn't social anxiety projecting shadows where none exist. What you've been sensing is real, tangible, and deeply intentional. Your face carries something that transcends physical features, bone structure, or conventional attractiveness. There's an imprint etched into your countenance that operates beyond the visible spectrum, communicating truths that bypass language entirely. And those who stare without speaking, they're responding to a frequency their conscious minds can barely comprehend, yet their spirits recognize with startling clarity. Before we go further, if this resonates with the questions you've been carrying, do me a favor. Subscribe to this channel. You've found your way here for a reason, and the insights we explore together will continue illuminating the path you're walking. This journey requires community, and your presence here matters more than you might realize. Let's begin with the unsettling truth. Your face reveals your assignment, not in the way fortune tellers claim to read destinies in palms or tea leaves, but through an authentic spiritual reality that most people never acknowledge. When you were set apart for divine purpose, when heaven marked you as chosen for a specific mission in this earthly realm, that selection didn't remain purely internal.
Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life, a guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming, with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10,000 readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who were tired of living in the fog, ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.
It manifested outwardly, subtly altering the energy signature you broadcast into every space you occupy. Think of it like this. Imagine two violins crafted from identical wood, shaped by the same hands, strung with matching materials. To the untrained eye, they appear indistinguishable, yet when played, one produces ordinary notes while the other resonates with a depth that makes listeners pause mid-conversation, their hearts suddenly heavy with inexplicable emotion. The difference? One instrument was consecrated, blessed, infused with intention beyond craftsmanship. Your being has undergone a similar consecration. Your face became the visible testimony of an invisible reality, heaven's fingerprint on human clay. This explains why people look but don't approach, why conversations stall when you enter, why even strangers seem to recognize something familiar yet foreign in your presence. They're encountering the sacred embedded in the ordinary, and most humans possess neither the vocabulary nor the courage to name what they're sensing. So they stare, they process, they retreat into silence while their spirits whisper warnings or reverence their conscious minds can't quite translate. Your facial features, yes, the physical architecture of eyes, mouth, the way light catches your expression, have become conduits for something far greater than genetics. When divine purpose saturates a person's inner world, it inevitably seeps outward. Your countenance carries the weight of battles fought in prayer closets. The gleam in your eyes reflects nights spent wrestling with God, emerging with both limp and blessing like Jacob at Peniel. The set of your jaw tells stories of refusals, moments you said no to compromise, no to shortcuts, no to the easy paths that would have derailed your calling. People see this testimony written in wordless script across your face, and it unnerves them, not because you're threatening, but because authentic spiritual authority always disrupts the shallow games people play to survive in a world built on pretense. Your presence functions like a mirror held up to their own souls, and most people instinctively flinch from honest reflection. They stare because they can't help themselves, drawn to the light, yet they remain silent because speaking would require acknowledging depths they're not ready to explore. But there's more. The seal on your face isn't just about what you've endured or overcome. It's prophetic. It broadcasts what you're becoming, the fullness of purpose still unfolding within you. Certain people possess discernment, spiritual vision that perceives beyond surface reality, and when they encounter you, they're seeing your future authority, your coming influence, the territory you'll eventually occupy in the kingdom of God. This glimpse can be overwhelming. Some recognize you as a threat before you've done anything threatening. They perceive the kingdom you'll build, the truth you'll speak, the systems you'll challenge, and self-preservation kicks in. They study you carefully, cataloging details, searching for weaknesses they might exploit later. Others see you as hope, a confirmation that God still raises up voices of righteousness in corrupt generations. They long to approach but fear their own unworthiness, assuming you've transcended struggles they still battle. Both groups remain silent, locked in their internal calculations, while you stand there simply trying to buy groceries or attend a meeting. If you're tracking with this, take a moment to like this video. That simple action helps this message reach others who desperately need to understand what they're experiencing. You're not alone in this, and together we're building awareness that transforms isolation into solidarity. Here's where it gets deeply personal. Many chosen ones misinterpret these silent stares as rejection, fueling narratives of inadequacy that plague their self-perception. You've probably questioned yourself countless times. What's wrong with me? Why do people act weird around me? Am I too intense, too different? Should I try harder to fit in? These doubts can become torturous, especially when you're already navigating the loneliness that often accompanies spiritual calling. But consider this perspective shift. What if those stares aren't judgment but recognition? What if the silence isn't exclusion but reverence? Throughout Scripture, encounters with the holy consistently produce speechlessness. When Moses descended from Sinai after meeting with God, his face shone so brightly that people couldn't look directly at him. They didn't reject Moses. They recognized the residue of divine encounter and responded with awe-struck silence. When the priests entered Solomon's temple and the glory of the Lord filled the space so densely they couldn't perform their duties, they didn't complain about the disruption. They fell silent before overwhelming sacredness. Your face carries a similar residue, not the theatrical glow of Hollywood special effects, but the subtle radiance that comes from intimate communion with the divine. It manifests as peace that seems incongruous with your circumstances, as confidence that doesn't rely on external validation, as a kind of settled knowing in your eyes that suggests you've seen beyond the veil and can no longer be manipulated by temporal threats or promises. This radiance particularly disturbs those living in spiritual darkness. Not darkness as in obvious evil, but the more common darkness of distraction, materialism, and soul-deep emptiness disguised as success. When they encounter your light, even diluted by your humility and attempts to blend in, their darkness recoils. They stare because something in them yearns toward your light, yet their allegiance to darkness keeps them paralyzed. Unable to advance toward you or retreat completely, they freeze in silent observation, caught between hunger and fear. Younger souls, not in age but in spiritual development, experience this most acutely. They've been conditioned to assess people through worldly metrics, wealth, beauty, status, charisma. But you defy easy categorization. You might possess none of those conventional markers, yet you command space in ways they can't explain. Their frameworks fail them, so they default to the most primitive response: watch the unfamiliar until it becomes familiar or reveals itself as threat. Unfortunately for them, you'll never become fully familiar because you're connected to mysteries they haven't begun to explore. But let's balance this with compassion. Not everyone who stares in silence is your enemy or spiritually stunted. Some are genuinely seeking what you carry. They sense you found something they're missing, access to peace they're desperately pursuing, and they hope proximity might somehow transfer that quality to their own lives. They don't speak because they don't know what questions to ask. How do you inquire about something you can't name? How do you request access to a realm you've only glimpsed in your deepest moments of honesty with yourself? These seekers study your face like travelers reading maps to buried treasure. They notice how you handle stress differently, how you respond to conflict with measured grace instead of reactive chaos, how you carry sorrow without bitterness, joy without arrogance. Your face tells them survival is possible, that integrity still exists, that there's a narrow path they've heard whispered about in their most vulnerable moments. They remain silent, not from hostility, but from respect, intuiting that what you carry is too sacred for casual conversation. Turn on your notifications for this channel because the journey ahead requires consistent truth, and you need these reminders delivered straight to you. The enemy will try to isolate you from messages that strengthen your resolve. Don't give him that advantage. Now, addressing the practical question you're probably wrestling with, what should you do when you catch someone staring in that knowing silence? First, release the burden of performance. You don't owe anyone an explanation, a smile to ease their discomfort, or an adjustment to your authentic presence. The seal on your face isn't something you control or manufacture. It's the organic result of your relationship with the divine. Trying to hide it would be like the sun attempting to dim its rays to avoid overwhelming human eyes. Absurd and impossible. Second, allow their reaction to inform your discernment. Not everyone who stares belongs in your inner circle. Some are merely curious observers, content to watch from safe distances. Others are assignment-specific connections, people heaven is positioning in your path for mutual blessing. And yes, some are monitoring you for reasons that aren't in your best interest. The silence itself becomes a filter. Those who break the silence wisely, approaching with humility and genuine interest, might be your people. Those who stare with cold calculation or speak later with undermining words reveal themselves as distractions or obstacles. Third, strengthen your internal anchor. The more grounded you become in your identity as chosen, set apart, and commissioned by heaven, the less those external stares affect your equilibrium. You'll start interpreting them correctly, as confirmation rather than condemnation. You'll walk into rooms aware that your presence shifts atmospheres, not from arrogance, but from sober understanding of spiritual dynamics. And you'll move through those spaces with the quiet confidence of someone who knows their assignment matters more than their audience's approval. Consider the biblical narrative of Joseph. From his youth, he carried himself differently. His brothers noticed it, resented it, couldn't articulate why their father's favor rested so obviously on him beyond the infamous coat. Joseph didn't walk around declaring his destiny, yet it emanated from him. His very presence reminded them of their own lack, their own missed opportunities for deeper relationship with their father. They stared at him with murderous silence before translating that silence into murderous action. But Joseph's story didn't end in the pit or the prison. The same quality that provoked his brother's hatred eventually caught Pharaoh's attention. Same face, same presence, different audience. Where his brothers saw a threat to eliminate, Pharaoh saw a solution to embrace. The seal on Joseph's countenance didn't change, context did. This teaches you a crucial lesson. Don't internalize rejection from people who were never meant to comprehend your assignment. Their stares measure their limitations, not your worth. Fast forward through redemptive history to another face that drew relentless attention, Jesus himself. Isaiah prophesied that the suffering servant would have no beauty or majesty to attract us to him, nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. Yet crowds pressed in constantly, hanging on his words, seeking his touch. What was it about his face that compelled such devotion from some and such violent hatred from others? His countenance carried undiluted truth. When he looked at the woman caught in adultery, she saw mercy that transformed shame into hope. When he fixed his gaze on the Pharisees, they encountered exposure that ignited rage. Same face, different hearts receiving it. His presence forced decisions. You either surrendered to the truth he embodied, or you mobilized to destroy it. No neutral ground existed in his proximity. You carry a fraction of that same dynamic. Your face presents truth that demands response. People stare because they're internally deciding what to do with what they see. Some will ultimately bow their hearts to the God you reflect. Others will harden further against the conviction your presence brings. The silence is the space where that decision begins to form. Drop a comment below if this is making sense. Share what you're experiencing, those moments when you felt this inexplicable attention. Your testimony might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to break through their own confusion. Let's address another layer, the weight of being seen without being known. This is perhaps the loneliest aspect of carrying a divine seal. People project onto you constantly. They see your composure and assume you never struggle. They notice your wisdom and conclude you've never made foolish choices. They observe your faith and imagine you've never wrestled with doubt. The face they're staring at becomes a screen for their projections rather than a window into your authentic humanity. This creates distance. You're surrounded by people who notice you but don't know you, who make assumptions about your strength but never ask about your pain, who expect you to have all the answers because your face suggests unshakable confidence. Meanwhile, you're carrying wounds and questions and very human needs for genuine connection. The seal that marks you for purpose can sometimes feel like a barrier to intimacy, but here's the redemptive reality. God sees past the seal to the person beneath. He knows the trembling faith masquerading as certainty. He recognizes the nights you've wept in confusion, questioning whether you're truly chosen or just delusional. He witnesses every moment you've felt inadequate for the assignment written across your face. And he doesn't love you because of the seal. He marked you with it because of his pre-existing love. This distinction matters immensely. You didn't earn the mark through performance or perfection. You received it through selection. Heaven looked at you, broken places, rough edges, unresolved questions and all, and said, "This one, I'm placing my signature on this one." The seal is evidence of divine affection, not evidence of your achievement. When people stare at your face, they're actually seeing God's choice on display, his willingness to partner with flawed humanity to accomplish eternal purposes. Understanding this frees you from the exhausting performance of trying to live up to what people think they see. You can acknowledge your humanity while honoring your calling. You can admit struggles while maintaining spiritual authority. You can be both chosen and still becoming, both marked and still being refined. The seal doesn't demand perfection. It requires faithfulness. Show up, stay yielded, keep saying yes to God even when his path makes no earthly sense. That's the testimony your face actually tells. There's also timing embedded in this dynamic. Not everyone is ready to perceive what your face reveals. Think of it like different stages of spiritual vision. Some people are blind to anything beyond physical appearance. They see features, maybe attractiveness or lack thereof, but nothing deeper registers. Others have developing discernment. They sense something unusual about you but can't name it, leading to that uncomfortable staring as they try to process undefined intuition. And a select few possess mature spiritual sight that recognizes exactly what they're seeing. A soul sealed for kingdom purposes, marked by divine encounter, commissioned for specific assignment. The stares you receive often correlate to the viewer's level of spiritual awareness. The spiritually blind might glance past you without reaction. The developing might stare in confusion. The mature might offer a subtle nod of recognition, an unspoken acknowledgement that says, "I see what you carry, and I honor it." Learning to discern which category people fall into helps you navigate interactions more wisely, investing deeply with those who have eyes to see while releasing expectations for those who don't. This brings us to warfare. Make no mistake, the enemy recognizes seals too. Demonic forces aren't confused about who poses genuine threat to their operations. They identify carriers of divine authority and deploy specific strategies to neutralize their effectiveness. One primary tactic: isolation. If the enemy can convince you that those stares mean rejection, that the silence equals unworthiness, that your differences disqualify you from belonging, then he successfully benched you before you even step onto the field. He wants you self-conscious instead of God-conscious, focused on how others perceive you rather than how heaven has commissioned you, paralyzed by social anxiety instead of moving in spiritual authority. Every moment you spend questioning why people stare is a moment stolen from your actual assignment. Every ounce of energy you invest in trying to make yourself more palatable to crowds is energy diverted from the focused obedience God requires. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. You know people in your life who experience this same phenomenon and struggle to make sense of it. Pass this along. Let's build a network of chosen ones who understand their identity and operate from that understanding rather than from the opinions of confused observers. The path forward requires intentionality. Start by accepting the seal as gift rather than burden. Yes, it sets you apart. Yes, it creates social friction. Yes, it attracts both admiration and antagonism, but it also opens doors that remain closed to unmarked souls. It grants you access to rooms, conversations, and opportunities reserved for those carrying divine credentials. The same presence that makes casual acquaintances uncomfortable positions you perfectly for strategic kingdom connections. Next, cultivate gratitude for the filter this creates. Not everyone needs access to you. Not every relationship deserves your investment. Not every invitation requires your presence. The seal on your face naturally repels those who would drain your energy, distract your focus, or derail your destiny. Instead of resenting the isolation this sometimes produces, thank God for protecting your assignment by limiting your circle to quality over quantity. Then develop your interior world with the same intensity you've endured exterior scrutiny. If people are going to stare at your face, let it be because there's genuine substance behind your eyes. Deepen your prayer life, sharpen your understanding of Scripture. Wrestle with theological questions until you emerge with convictions strong enough to weather storms. Let your relationship with God become so rich that His opinion drowns out all others, His voice so familiar that human whispers fade into background noise. Additionally, embrace your role as living epistle. Paul wrote that believers are letters known and read by everyone. Your face is the cover of that letter, the first page people encounter before deciding whether to keep reading. Make sure the content matches the cover. Live with such integrity that those who stare long enough will eventually see consistency, your private character aligning with your public presence, your actions confirming the authority your countenance suggests. This doesn't mean perfection, but it does mean authenticity. When you stumble, own it. When you're wrong, admit it. When you need help, ask for it. The seal on your face doesn't require you to pretend infallibility. It requires you to demonstrate what grace looks like in real time. People need to see that chosen ones are still human, still growing, still dependent on divine mercy for every breath. That testimony might be even more powerful than supernatural manifestations. Finally, prepare for increase. The attention you're receiving now is preparation for greater visibility later. If silent stares in small settings unsettle you, how will you handle platforms where thousands watch simultaneously? If you can't steward the weight of one person's prolonged gaze, how will you carry the responsibility of influencing multitudes? God is training you in obscurity for assignments that will eventually thrust you into prominence. These seemingly awkward moments when people stare without speaking, they're teaching you to remain centered regardless of external observation, to stay connected to your why when the who or how many changes, to draw validation from heaven rather than from human response. You're being fortified, not punished, shaped, not shamed. Every uncomfortable stare is a rung on the ladder, leading to greater authority and broader impact. The seal on your face is permanent. It won't fade with age or change with circumstances. You'll carry it into every season, every transition, every new chapter. So learning to wear it well isn't optional, it's essential. And wearing it well means accepting it fully, stewarding it wisely, and allowing it to accomplish exactly what God intended, separating you from the masses, marking you for purpose, and declaring to every realm that you belong to the King. When you walk into your next room and feel those eyes locking onto you, remember this moment. Remember that you're not weird, you're anointed. Not broken, but chosen. Not too much, but precisely measured for your assignment. Let them stare. Let them wonder. Let them process what their spirits recognize, even if their minds can't explain it. You just keep walking in obedience, secure in the knowledge that heaven's seal matters infinitely more than earth's opinion. Your face tells a story written by divine fingers across human canvas. It speaks of selection, preparation, and coming glory. It whispers to discerning hearts that God still raises up standard-bearers in corrupt generations. It shouts to demonic powers that their time is limited and their defeat certain. All of this communicated through the simple fact of your presence in a space. So carry yourself accordingly, not with arrogance that alienates, but with quiet confidence that inspires. Not with aloofness that isolates, but with accessible authority that invites the genuine while repelling the counterfeit. Let your face be what God made it, a testimony in flesh, a seal in time, a declaration that the kingdom of God advances through surrendered vessels who dare to accept their chosenness, even when it costs them